Yo, what is up everybody? Welcome along to the drop episode of what is the 2010-ish era-ish dubstep track from Scratch series. It is really the big one we've all been waiting for. But for this episode, it's not really going to go in our usual style. And basically the reason why that is because there's been so much pressure to get this drop right. I recorded an initial episode for a couple hours where I just worked on Massive and FM8 sound design, and that ended up turning out like shit. Alright then, scratch that. I'll work on the drop off camera, see if I can come up with anything for a couple hours. That turned out shit as well. Did another session of those, and so now the first drop of the tune is finally in a good state where I'm happy to share it with you guys. So yeah, this episode is going to be a little bit different. It's just going to be diving into the sound design, how I made certain basses, what it's sounding like now, structuring it, processing it, etc, etc. Before we get into the actual drop which I've come up with, it's time to listen to some old attempts and see what these basses sounded like. Oh dear. Trashy wub basses. So yeah, so that was shit. I made somewhat of a good effort on this one, but it was just too clustery. It could turn into something good with a little bit more effort here and there. Like that could be turned into something. And here we are in the actual session, which I am happy with now, not those previous attempts. Ableton again. This needs a little bit of work actually. Shit. And yeah, here we are, and this is my next of it off from all that. Ow. Yeah, so the main thing we'll be diving into this episode is dem basses. Still haven't used OTT yet? Yeah, be proud of me, because I am. I don't really know where to begin. Usually these episodes are like, let's start making a bass and then we'll go from there, but it's all been done. Let's start with the simple stuff. Basically the drums have been thickened up a bit. I've added quite a few more layers. If you can remember back in the verse. Just like a hi-hat, a little bit of a loop, kick snare, nothing special. Alright, so we have the kick. We have another snare. I noticed a little sound design technique, I don't know if this was intentional or not, listening to Trolley Snatchers tunes, whenever the snare comes in, it would just have a really wide layer on top of the snare. So the snare comes in and it's super wide and super hard hitting. I don't know if that was part of the sample or like a genuinely intentional thing to like thicken up the snare on both sides, but I decided to do that as well. Little micro shift just to widen it a little bit and turn it down so it's like blending into the mix. Another classic kind of 2010 era thing would be the reverse snare. Super subtle, super effective, a clap layer, and I think another clap layer just to help thicken up the snare. Another loop for backing textures and atmosphere and shit like that. Another hi-hat, a faster hi-hat, and another backing loop. And more crashes. Nothing special processing wise, just stripping off the bass end for the higher frequency instruments or drum sounds. So yeah, like your hi-hats, your cymbals, your rides, your drum loops, all kind of like have that low end stripped out, just to make room for the bass to have it. And yeah, that's it. Scrolling back up, we have an insanely fast arpeggiator to 32, saturator, sidechain, a little bit of width. No low end, obviously, because it's the drop. We want all that low end for the bass. Just 3 saw waves and doing different octaves. and with a little bit of a bump in the pitch modern. So if we turn this off, every time a note strikes, the pitch rises in volume from an octave down into that, hence why it's 12 semitones here. And yeah, double notch filter, just to emulate kind of like a Serum thing. You know how you got your filters off to the right hand side, and the notch filters and peak filters in Serum are wicked, so I thought emulate something like that. Distortion, dimension expander, make it wide, and that is it. We have the slow art for backing textures from the verse. Fill in the blank empty spaces, and last thing backing wise would be the vocal repetition, which we use in our build up, and I just turned it up a bit, added a bit of sidechain. Easy peasy. Alright, so this chunky sound is made up of not 1, not 5, not 7, but 9 massives. Oh, poor CPU. And yeah, the reason why there's 9 of them is each one caters towards a specific band of the frequency spectrum. That's sounding way more technical than it needs to be. So for the first low bass saw, we're kind of working around our mids here. We got this next layer, which is just heaps. Low saw bass was around here. This is just everything above. We'll dive into those basses in a second. We have old school here, which is kind of just meant to be like another low bass saw layer, but emphasize on being quite wide as well. So these two together. Nice. Lead layer. The higher end of the frequency spectrum, and lead 2, which is essentially the same as this, just a different wavetable and I think an octave lower. Just give it a little bit more character, I reckon. And then of course your fatty sub bass. So it's a sine wave with just a little bit of an envelope on the pitch, and the classic overdrive is set to the lowest setting frequency wise, and with a fat limiter. Where the limiter kicks in. Nice. Diving back into this first low saw bass. Another pitch envelope. I do a lot of them in this this drop basically, which feeds into a comb filter and the scream filter. Comb filter, so if you think towards like Serum, how Serum has so many different comb filters, the massive one's pretty cool as well, but chuck that through a scream filter as well. Just gives it a little bit extra drive, and what would you know, a tube / distortion, and then a bit of dimension expander. Alright, let's go into the secondary layer. First off, sub bass. A little bit of a pitch wobble there. I didn't want it to kind of just do a consistent note, and yeah, it's literally a square wave, the low pass filter. That's why it's kind of the muted sound, but with vibrato cranked all the way up. That's the stock vibrato as well, which Massive just loads up on its own whenever you open up a new patch. Easy peasy. That sounds absolutely trash. It's meant to fill in the high frequencies, hence why these oscillators are set at such a high pitch. 31, if you're thinking, wait a minute, aren't octaves 0, 12, 24, 36, 48? That doesn't really fit into it. That'd be perfect pitch, drop it down. Kind of, I think it's like a 5th below, or, oh, I'm gonna get this so wrong. I think it's a 5th. Anyway, it just works, okay. And then another layer. A little bit of little micro shift, which is just to widen it up a bit more. Oh, and look, more pitch envelopes. 1, 2, 3 of them. Just kind of give it like a stacked sound and character. And if you're thinking right now, oh my goodness, it's that pitch wobble which I heard so many times in 2010, especially in D&B tunes. It's the frequency shifter. I don't know how or why, but when you crank up the pitch ever so slightly past the 12 o'clock mark, it does that weird sound. Which sounds amazing when you dance the notes up and down the keyboard. Kind of like a beat frequency oscillation, I don't know, it does something amazing, which is awesome. And a 7th, this one's labeled a 7th this time. I really need to get that shit sorted so I can explain what the fuck I'm talking about. This isn't 24. It just works. Pitch envelopes, of course, up and down, and a screen filter. Give it a little bit more drive. And the great thing about Serum, obviously, is you can draw in your LFOs and envelopes. And Massive, you're kind of stuck with what you've got. Sure, you can make random patterns like that, but with an envelope, you haven't really got that much creativity to muck around with. So you kind of have to have gradual modulating sounds, which, I don't know, kind of lends itself to that old 2010 dubstep sound. All these 4 basses grouped together. Something okay-ish sounding, but nothing out of this world. It's just when all the basses come together, they fill in each other's frequency spectrums, and boom. Another kind of frequency shifter effect right here. Square wave, saw wave, square wave. No filtering going on. And of course that frequency shifter. And a 7th, or a 5th, fuck, I forgot, hence why it's 19. It's 7 semitones, but it's called a 5th, because it's the 5th note in that scale. I also wonder if the perfect 5th lends itself into that old school dubstep sound. Anyway, next layer. These basses and leads aren't that complex or fancy. It's just like some great sounding oscillators and Massive with a tiny bit of distortion and doing a perfect 5th on some of the notes, and it just works. I feel like lead 2 is going to be a lot of that as well. Different wavetable shapes in Massive, and distortion and dimension expander. Brilliant. And we already walked through the sub. So yeah, that is... That's a random filler bass. We don't need to go into that. What we need to go into is this beautiful bass here. Alright, let's turn off all the effects, because there is a few of them, especially the EQs. This sound needs to be shaped quite a lot. Even that in Massive sounds sick. The main thing we need to take away here is the macro routing on the screen filter. So the filter gives it all its character. If you see macro 2 going for its life, hence why the automation is my damn camera battery keeps dying, so I'm using my phone for the rest of the video. I can't be fucked. The screen filter gives it so much character. It's literally just sine wave, then a square wave. The second oscillator set 3 octaves above the first, and yeah, with that screen filter, classic distortion and dimension expander, can't go wrong with those two. And a parabolic shape, I think. So the way this is mapped, obviously just 2 things really. When I increase the macro, it increases the cutoff and the screen filter. That'd be great for a D&B roller actually. And pitch envelope, of course. And going through all the effects. Erosion does fuck all really, just a little bit of grit towards this kind of frequency here. Overdrive, give it just a real gritty and dirty sound. Saturate, of course, give it a little bit extra drive as well. Overdrive and saturate to get it. If the screen filter wasn't enough, it's super distorted now and sounding amazing. Little micro shift, classic, make it a bit wider. Classic. Sidechain from the kick, sidechain from the snare. EQ8 wanted to strip the low end off this bass entirely because we've got a sub bass filling out those low end frequencies there. A little bit of creative notching and ducking in certain frequencies which need it. How I came to this conclusion, oh, it's got a little bit too much width, just dip that down a bit. Oh, it needs a little bit more high end, just push this up a bit. That's it. And if it wasn't distorted enough already, another saturator right at the end with a soft clip on to catch it and make sure it doesn't distort. Because it was, yeah, redlining a bit there, so easy fix. I'm not going to go through all the basses. I've got a screechy here which is just really accompanying this as well, which kind of sounds like a 2010 kind of classic. I got some inspiration from a few Massive tutorials on this one, and honestly great sounding 2010-ish era dubstep basses. Start with like a low oscillator like your sub bass. Introduce something else which is 4 octaves above it. Screen filter for that distortion. Parabolic shaper as well, and some more distortion. I'll leave a link to the video below of the tutorial I watched to get that kind of Dr. P screecher sound. Yeah, the main kind of chord stack sound, going through a group, saturator, soft clip on. This is to make sure it doesn't redline. EQ8 to make sure there's no low bass for the sub bass to kick through. And that's it. A little frequency shifter automation here. It just like drops a little bit. So the pitch kind of just towards the end. But then again, the second kind of wub basses and the sub bass and the chord stack all filter into this main group with another saturator on soft clip, because I think it was redline clipping before. Or it was very close to being. And a mid scoop because there's so many low instrument massives happening. Just a little bit too messy there, so a duck there and a little duck there for the bands. If you're wondering what the hell is this doing over here, this is our sidechain compression. Yes, there is sidechain compression on the basses, but this is like the last sidechain compression. Thankfully, the OG Dr. P actually released one of his stems for Shish Kebab ages ago. It's still up on his SoundCloud, and as you can see here, this is the bass channel. Nothing is happening here, and then the volume is getting a little bit louder here. So I was like, I wonder if he's manually sidechaining that with just like a complete volume cut. So I thought Dr. P's got a great sound, I'll just model my sidechain off that. So if you can match these two, there's a complete cut of sound there and then it gradually comes in there. I thought, yeah, I'll test this out. I'll make sure this volume cut happens whenever I have a kick or a snare, and then it actually sounded pretty good. So I'm like, you know what, I'll keep it. The perks of doing this volume sidechain compression is you get way more control over it. Instead of relying on like ratio, attack, release, threshold, you can like draw in how you want your sound to duck. I think you get a cleaner sound, but it's more work and you have to copy and paste a lot of automation, and it can be a little bit of a nightmare. Whereas just setting up sidechain compression, done, linked to this kick. So yeah. And yeah, that makes up the drop. We got our fast up, we got our layered drums with way more layers than the verse, backing effects, etc, etc. A huge 9 massive super stack for the drop. Yeah, and yeah, some wubs and shit. Vocal repetition, that is a classic in 2010. Drop 2, which is the second melodic part of the drop. Honestly, it's super simple. It's a blend between the verse and the chorus. The verse being that kind of heavy re-space with the vocals, and the chorus slash drop being the super stacked layered drum sound. That might be too much. That actually might suit a little bit more. We don't need as much impact because the first drop is heavy, the second drop is melodic, so we don't really need that. Oh no, I'm starting the next part already. This might be the break slash bridge, and that is going to be the next episode. It feels weird doing an episode of one of these series without actually making something instead of just like explaining. So we're going to make something for old time's sake. It'll be that kind of growly sound. Yes, okay. Change the octave. Square for the bands. So let's go 2 octaves up, and then we'll do the perfect 5th because classic. And yeah, it's screen filter because screen filter kicks ass. Teletube. Too much distortion, holy shit. And the classic pitch envelope, which I mentioned too many times during this episode. Real simple, make sure you have like a ramped up sound like that. Attack is going to be the key player here. Click that, drag it over to here. Is it click and drag? Yeah, it's click and drag. And whichever way you start determines the pitch of it. So it's traveling up 12 semitones to get to the pitch, and since the attack is super long on this envelope, the pitch will travel up 12 semitones. And if we do a negative 12, the pitch will travel down to 12 semitones. And that's too low, too low, too low. Set this to 12. I kind of like the pitch up effect. Drag it onto the second, drag it onto the third. And voicing, we want to make sure only one note is playing at a time. Mono, rotate. Legato, triller. sounds like the pitch is taking a little bit too long to get up to the 12th semitone. So we're going to drag that attack backwards. And another thing which I mentioned quite a lot in this episode is the frequency shifter. Pitch it up just a little bit. Too much, too much, too much. Minute adjustments. Let's wobblify it really quick. Chuck that onto that cutoff.
A few moments later.
Oh, fuck. Oh my god. Not gonna lie, for a moment there, I completely forgot I was recording a tutorial. I was lost in the yoi. So yeah, I guess that wraps up the tutorial. Sorry it's not the conventional way of me sitting down and I'll show you how I'm gonna make this. More a presentation of what I did. But yeah, the pressure was so much to make this drop. It took me so many hours to settle on this and be like, okay, now I can finally show everybody what I've done. So yeah. Next episode's gonna be the break/bridge. I'll do that on camera for sure. I can't see that as being as stressful as working on the drop. Stay tuned for the next piece of the puzzle. Gonna be a banger. Time to turn Ozone on and wrap up the video. As per usual, if you did enjoy, be sure to smash that like button. Mean a lot, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial or whatever we do on this channel. We know what we're doing on this channel. Break/bridge. Next Sunday, gonna be a banger. Peace.